These courses have been written in a context. We're responding to the current protection needs of children in the light of numbers of contemporary factors. And the first is that there is a training crisis at the moment. There is a lack of introductory courses. They used to be run regularly in authorities many times a year, and all staff used to have to attend them, but that has really slipped of late, and many professionals have not had these courses. There's also a transient workforce and a lack of skill in the workforce generally that is of concern. We're looking at numbers of agency staff, a very high staff turnover, the loss of experienced staff, an expectation generally that child protection is common sense, that anybody can do it, anyone can conduct an assessment around a child protection issue. This makes specialist training even more essential. The complexity of the protection task has also increased greatly. We're looking now at many serious crimes against children, well reported in the media, such as trafficking, sexual exploitation, internet abuse, abusive images of children being made a whole global industry of child abuse. The subject itself has become much more difficult. We're also looking at increased pressure on those working with children. 80% of social work time, for instance, now is spent in front of computer screens with even less time now for speaking with children and seeing children. They're working to rigid timescales and to very rigid procedures and processes, leaving little time for creativity and reaching out to the needs of children. We're looking at a conveyor belt approach, a performance culture. And we're also looking at a policy shift generally away from child protection, which made us feel that these courses were very important at the current time. There's been a change of language throughout the literature of safeguarding children rather than protecting children. We use the words in these courses of safeguarding, but in the sense of the dictionary definition of security from danger, safekeeping, protection from hurt or injury, rather than the government definition of minimising risk to children's welfare and an approach to address child concerns. We're really firmly defining safeguarding as very absolutely inclusive of protection. We also focus on Section 47 investigation of significant harm to children rather than the very broad definition of child concerns. We focus on investigation as a distinct process. Assessment, of course, may be part of an investigation, but many protocols currently confuse the two, and we're seeing, I think, some dangerous practice where professionals are conducting assessments and forgetting all about Section 47 investigations, and Victoria Climbier's case was a prime example of that. We focus on joint investigation of child abuse and the targeting of perpetrators. We focus on the risk of harm to the child, not on the child at risk of being a trouble to society. We shift away from a punitive approach to children to seeing children as possible victims of adult abuse. We're in a society now where more children are locked up for longer times than ever before and for less serious crimes. And so that is an overall context. It's very difficult to define children as victims if we're only seeing them as potential or actual criminals. We also focus on children in all socio-economic classes because abuse it cuts across all boundaries. So in that way we go beyond the inclusion agenda and we move away from the focus purely on children in the lower socio-economic classes. The courses are also in the context of our knowledge about a reduction in protective action towards children. For instance, although the numbers of children referred to social services has stayed the same in the last 5 years, as has the number of Section 47 investigations, the numbers of children on the child protection registers has halved for the categories of sexual and physical abuse. The Safeguarding Children Inspector's report in 2005 expressed concern that the thresholds for defining cases of child protection and acting to protect were actually being made too high. Even Lord Laming noted a reduction in 47s in the sense that they were not progressing to child protection planning to protect. And now there is a great deal of concern about the abolition of the Child Protection Register, because that is our most important tool that we have for protecting children, and it focuses on children at high risk of abuse. And there is concern that the children that are at high risk of abuse and of significant harm particularly will be lost amongst a sea of child concerns. We must never forget Victoria Climbié was defined as a child in need. She was responded to as a child and the family as a refugee family who needed housing, education and health services. She was not defined as a child in need of protection, so the questions were not asked about whether or not she had been suffering harm. We know that working together to protect children works really well. All the research tells us that. Children whose names are placed on the Child Protection Register and where multi-agency planning to protect is in place are very rarely among those who die from child abuse. The children who are known to social services who do die as a result of child abuse are largely children who, from the point of initial referral, have never been defined as children in need of protection. They never make that leap into being defined by all the professionals involved as children who are at high risk of actual or likely significant harm, and Section 47s are not initiated and child protection conferences not held. Those are the children who slip through the net. When we look at inquiries, we often see a very large number of referrals had been made, in a particular case, to social services. So our courses promote working together as actually tried and tested. They support skilled specialist practitioners in a range of areas of specialism. We firmly believe that to protect children effectively, different professionals who feel very confident in their own specific profession sit round a table and debate from a point of strong professional identity. This is when children get protected. For those not in the professions, also to have a knowledge of the range of roles involved in protecting children and what is specifically expected of them. We also take a view in the courses that children need both prevention and protection. One is absolutely little use without the other. Prevention strategies teach the public and professionals to recognise and report abuse, the network of protective adults in the community. The protection of children requires appropriate reporting, enabling professionals to prioritise, investigate, to intervene and to act to protect. So the courses emphasise both protection and prevention, not as alternatives, but both as absolutely essential. Prevention does not remove the need for protection, but it encourages early identification and protective action. Just to talk briefly about a child called Alia Ismail, I conducted a serious case review on her in the year 2000. She died in 1998, aged 13 years old. She was found in a London borough. She'd been sexually exploited. She died from an overdose of methadone. She had told a wide range of professionals. She'd been known from when she was born right to when she died to the many agencies. I think 230 professionals were involved in her case right from beginning to end. And she'd had spoken of physical and sexual abuse by numbers of perpetrators, and quite often she'd retracted some of these allegations, which, as we know, only serves to reinforce the validity of the original statements. She was labelled manipulative, rude, and that she was inventing allegations. She was defined as making a problem for the services, and her case was defined as that she needed to be put somewhere to be safe, so she was in many different care placements, but child protection procedures were never initiated for her, and so the people who were abusing her were never targeted. Another example is Becky, which was covered by a Real Story programme on the 29th of August 2006, which I took part in with my colleague Nora Duckett from this university. And it was an anonymised case of a 14-year-old, but based on a real case, and she'd made over 40 disclosures of sexual abuse and had alleged abuse within her home and by 25 perpetrators. She never ever gave up telling a wide range of professionals over many months, despite being labelled a nuisance and an inventor of allegations.